Thank you. Thank you all. This afternoon, a very good friend of mine and a business associate who's sitting right here said, I'm going to be coming to your event tonight. And she said, just be smart and short. So good night and thank you very much. Because so many wonderful things have been said here tonight and so much ground covered by such good people, I thought, well, you know, maybe what I can do is share with you all how I came into this. And because Senator Chuck has covered incredible ground, and I'm very appreciative of him spreading such optimism, because I think we need that. And then, of course, Gene. God love Gene. And then ever John Adams. These are all people I'm devoted to, and I think we should all be devoted to. And then there's finally the group that's honoring me here tonight, which is really, really special. So anyway, here's how it kind of started for me. When, maybe, must have been the late 60s, I guess, and I was in Colorado on another matter, and nearby there was a conference on energy with some top-level people, government people and officials and so forth. So I just dropped in to see what was going on. And when I sat there, now this is like 1970 maybe, something like that, there's this chart that somebody puts up, and it has a dividing line between renewable energy sources and non-renewable energy sources. And all the energy from our government, corporations, the money and so forth, was stacked into the non-renewable side, coal, gas, oil, so on. On the renewable side was pretty empty. Wind, solar, geothermal, energy conservation. And I thought, well, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, if we're thinking about the future, if we're thinking about the planet that we're on, I mean, this is probably the only planet we've got, and we've already done a lot of damage to it. What are we talking about here? Now, this is, as I said a while back. So I think right about that time, since I already knew my commitment to nature was pretty solid because I had spent my childhood years in the Sierras, working in Yosemite National Park. I worked there a couple of summers, a lot of time in the desert, the oceans. So my passion was certainly on the side of nature, but when I saw this, I guess that was the moment that I committed to be an activist politically. So the funny thing about it is when you're a young person, when you're a young man like I was at that time, and you commit to something like that, you don't imagine that it's going to turn out to be a lifetime commitment and also a lifetime battle. But here we are and here I am, and so I stand here tonight not alone, because all of you here tonight, most of you, friends of mine, and people connected with the League of Conservation Voters, have all walked down that road. So I feel very comfortable here tonight. I feel like I'm among friends, and so I'd like to turn it back and thank you for walking that road with me. So looking back, so what's going on? Say, what are we doing? What needs to be done? It wasn't always like this. And I remember when I started out, there was, in Congress, there was some bipartisanship. There was enough bipartisanship for people on both sides of the aisle to work together, to get things done. And we saw incredible things happen. And mind you, most of the advances were done during a Republican president's time. I won't mention his name. But it was done during his time. And I'd also like to take a moment right here and acknowledge Russell Train. I mean, this guy, here he was Republican, moderate, and he did so much. He cared about the air, you know, the air that we breathe, the water we drink, and the places we love. He cared about that. So this wasn't a partisan situation for him. It was about doing something for the public good. And people on the other side of the aisle reached across. So in those days, we accomplished a lot, and it was very encouraging. There were always the disappointments, but there always have been. But things were moving. We got Clean Air, Clean Water, Environmental Policy Act. We got all these acts passed. And I was so excited to be a part of it. During the time that I committed and I decided to go on the road and do what I could, I got hammered pretty hard. I had to hear over and over again all through the 70s, well, what does he know? He's an actor. Until Reagan got elected, and that took that argument off the table. But still, there was a lot to go on. There was still the fight to be had. And so now, when I think about those times, and I think, well, you know, actually, when we look back on it, it's a pretty good time. But now, what have we got? We've got a war zone. And what are we talking about? How can we have a man running for the office of the President of the United States in this great democracy, believing in not denying global climate change and endorsing oil subsidies? I mean, you really wonder what kind of a world and what kind of a time is this man living in? I mean, it's a man who can seem so oblivious to changing times, and these are changing times. The planet is changing, and humans have to change. And where is he? 1950. Welcome to 1950. So he said, well, where did this come from? How did somebody like this come into this place? I mean, where does he live? All right, I won't go any further than that. But here we say, okay, there have been some gains. It looks like a bit of a rollback because of the behavior in Congress being such a partisan place right now. But you don't give up the fight. And I remember being told by a wonderful lady, Joan Claybrook, who kind of taught me how to lobby years ago. And I'm not a patient person. And I was dumbfounded at the behavior of some congressional people who were saying things that made no sense to me, and I would get anxious and uptight. And she would say, hey, you got to just understand something. You don't always lose. And I thought that was such a great attitude to carry forward. I tried to adopt that for myself on the environment. You don't always lose. And it's sad that there has to be a fight. It's sad that this has to keep going. But it does. And we need all the help we can get. And here we have, I'd like to mention, of course we've mentioned NRDC. There's some other friends here tonight. I'm sure there are more friends that are here that I'm not aware of. Joe Brower, Louise Dunlop, who started the Environmental Policy Center. These are great people who are still working hard. Many of you are. And I'm among friends in that regard. But because of the League of Conservation Voters, if you just look at it and break it apart, you've got League, which means you've got a group together. You've got conservation, which is the purpose. You've got voters, which are the people. You put all those together, and you've got a pretty powerful energy force. And I think we need to do everything in our power to continue to support them. They're doing just a great job. And finally, I would say this, that there's not a lot that we can really be proud of in terms of what my generation anyway has done to this planet, no matter how hard some of us have tried. But there's a reason to be optimistic, and I think it's about youth. I honestly believe that this is a bright spot in our future. The youth of today, I would love to see all of us and League of Conservation Voters focus on the youth. Talk to them. Inspire them. Bring them in. It's their world they're going to be stepping into. Give them the reins. I think they're qualified to handle it. But bring them in. Get them involved, because they might be the best new asset we can get. So I would encourage the League to really focus on young people. And speaking as an old person, I thank you all very much for this award.